Okay, so good morning, gents. This is Mr. Holding. This quick video is about the soluble and insoluble crack, and we're just going to go through how to do it. Okay, so looking at our setup, just going through our materials that we've got. We've got our 6 test tubes, we've got our rubber stoppers in the top. Okay, we've got our test tube rack, we've got our spatula. I've also got one here to use for the iodine. We've got alcohol and methylated spirits. We've also got water, and we've got samples of salt, sugar, coffee, copper sulfate, iodine that the teacher will have to do, and flour. Alright, so what I've done now is I've gone through and I've written a name on each of them. So I've got salt, sugar, coffee, copper sulfate, iodine, and my flour, and that allows me to do it fairly quickly. So what I'm then now going to do is I'm going to use my spatula, and I'm going to put a small amount, the size of a grain of rice, into each of those of the respecting solutes. Okay, so I'll do that fairly quickly. Okay, so now I've gone through and I've put my solutes in each of them. So salt, sugar, coffee, copper sulfate, iodine, and the flour. You need to be careful with the iodine because it does stain your skin. We're doing this in 2 steps. The first one, part A, we're going to do with water. So we're going to go and fill the test tubes up to about 1/3. Okay, and then shake them for 30 seconds and see whether it's going to do that. So we'll go and do that for the first one. Alright, so fill that up to about 1/3, which is about there, and then shake or agitate for about 30 seconds. So what we've done then is we've gone and put 1/3 of the water in. We've tried to be as accurate as possible so that we're consistent. So size of the tube, the amount of water, we shook them all for the same amount of time. So this is the salt one. Okay, we look very closely there and see that lots of it has actually disappeared. It's gone. Okay, so what does that mean? Is it soluble, slightly soluble, or insoluble? You need to make a decision on that. Same with the sugar. All right, so we can't see anything in there. We've got our coffee. All right, so we can definitely see there's a change in colour, but we need to determine whether it's dissolved or not. We've got our copper sulfate, which again has changed colour, but can we see any bits floating in the bottom? You'll be able to see that better in person. Got your iodine. Okay, so it's changing colour, but you can see there's a solid at the bottom. All right, so need to make a judgment on whether it's soluble, slightly soluble, or insoluble. And then finally, we've got our flour. And it might be hard to see in the video, but you can see there is bits floating around, and at the bottom there's bits that is eventually sinking as well. So is that soluble, slightly soluble, insoluble, and also whether or not there's a suspension formed. Okay, so have a look at those. So that's the first step. Okay, we obviously then clean these out, dispose of them according to how the teacher says, and then we're going to do exactly the same thing with alcohol. All right, we're not going to do that in this video, okay, but you'll actually do that and go through the same process, put the solutes in, then add methylated spirits to it and see which ones are alcohol soluble. Okay, all these results should be recorded in our results table. Okay, so we should have drawn something like that, and you can either put salt in water is soluble, slightly soluble, insoluble. Sugar in water is soluble, insoluble, or slightly soluble, and then the same thing for alcohol. So you should end up with a table with all your results, and then you can go ahead and start answering your discussion questions on the last page. All right, hopefully you found this useful. Thank you.